Bischoff gently rubbed his chin, pondering. But the words he had just heard, did they imply that he wanted to abandon his son? Shirone could not bear it anymore. He agitatedly grabbed his father's arm, shouting emotionally, "Father, what are you doing? How could you say those words without discussing it with me first?" Vincent avoided his son's gaze. His voice lowered. "I'm sorry, Shirone, but you're an adult now. You need to know the truth." Suddenly, Shirone looked at his father seriously, his voice full of questioning. "Do you really think I don't know anything?" That sentence stunned Vincent as if he had been hit straight in the heart. Shirone's mood was heavy at this moment, immersed in deep sadness. He struggled to say, "The reason I didn't ask you is because each person only has one father, one mother. I've always wanted that. And now you want me to have 6 parents?" His voice was trembling, mixed with panic, fear, and heartbreaking pain. Vincent choked, his voice trembling. "Dad just wants you not to give up your dream because of me." His tears fell silently, each drop soaked in pain. Shirone couldn't hold back, shouting resolutely, "Who said I gave up my dream? As long as I try, the opportunity will definitely come." But then he painfully looked straight at his biological father, tears falling, his voice faltering. "Dad, have you ever thought about how I feel? Who wants to be abandoned by their parents twice?" Vincent held Shirone's hand tightly, his hand trembling. "It's all my fault, Shirone," he exclaimed, his voice full of regret. "Dad will never abandon you, never." With that, he pulled his little son into his arms, hugging him tightly as if afraid of losing him forever. Words of love poured out like a spring. Vincent sobbed. "Please forgive this stupid father. You are my everything." The father and son hugged each other tightly, exchanging heartfelt words. The people around were silent, silently witnessing the sacred and noble family affection. Bischoff, when he saw that scene, suddenly realized something profound. What we do for our children, even if it comes from love, sometimes hurts them. Klump sighed and said, "Being a parent is really difficult." He turned to Bischoff and asked, "Raising a child alone, isn't it hard for you too?" Bischoff was silent. His eyes were already filled with tears. He raised his hand to cover them, trying to hide the tears so that no one could see. His gaze shifted slightly to Ryan, his son standing in front, who was also crying. Ryan was moved by the deep affection between Vincent and Shirone. Suddenly, Bischoff spoke up. "I heard that Alpheus Magic Academy has a special consideration system. Father can help." Klump was surprised and replied, "Huh? What can an old man like me do?" Klump wondered, "How can I convince that stubborn Alpheus?" Bischoff chuckled and replied, "Really not? I heard that he was in debt to you." Klump burst out laughing when he heard this. For someone who always follows the rules, isn't the best way to deal with him using stubbornness?" Bischoff also laughed, saying, "Father used that trick to force me to become the head of the family." He slightly avoided eye contact and added, "It was all for your own benefit." 3 days later, when Rian went to the Sword Academy, the Augent family allowed my family to stay. Father still felt guilty towards me, not knowing how long he would feel this time. Finally, Rian and I had some time together. We both took advantage of the precious moment to lie down and chat. Rian looked very happy, her smile bright, her eyes sparkling as she looked at her best friend beside her. Shirone listened to Rian's stories and couldn't help but laugh heartily, her laughter filled with delight. 3 days later, the two of them had to leave their familiar home to go to the academy where their dreams began. Shirone turned her head slightly, silently, admiring the familiar scene once more. Suddenly, sobbing sounded. It turned out to be Ryan. He was sobbing, tears streaming down his face. Shirone quickly said, "Ryan, don't cry." But Rian choked up and replied, "How can I not cry? Once we get on the bus, we have to go to the Sword Academy. We really have to be apart." The more he talked, the louder he cried, "Why can't I enroll next year like you?" Shirone smiled and comforted. "I'm not sure if I'll be considered for special consideration yet. But don't worry, we can still see each other during the holidays. Remember to write letters every day." Suddenly, Rian placed his hand on Shirone's shoulder and called out resolutely, "Shirone, you have to put in all your effort." Rian shouted, his eyes shining, "You must become a mage, Shirone, and I will become the strongest knight to protect you. I promise." Before he could finish, he was punched painfully in the head by Reina. "Just worry about graduating first," Reina shouted. "I'm worried about you the most." Then she turned to Shirone, her voice softening. "Shirone, don't worry about anything. Just enjoy yourself with your family first. He will definitely help you get into school." Shirone nodded slightly, replying, "Yes, thank you for helping me." He placed his hand on his chest, bowing his head in deep gratitude. Reina smiled, thinking, "What a special child. At first, I just thought he was a cute kid, but it turns out he's very thoughtful." He still kept his faith, even in such a scary situation. Suddenly, she looked at Shirone and continued, "Shirone, maybe when you graduate." Reina suddenly fell silent and did not continue. She thought to herself, "What am I thinking? He is about to enter a completely new environment at the Magic Academy." Then she walked over, put her hand on Shirone's shoulder, and said warmly, "No, just do your best. You will definitely become an excellent mage." Shirone smiled and replied, "Please take care of Ryan for me." Ryan nodded, pulled Ryan into the carriage, then turned around and waved goodbye to Shirone. Shirone got into the other carriage, where his parents were already sitting. He was filled with excitement and anticipation. The sound of horse hooves began to ring, and the two carriages rolled, gradually going in opposite directions and moving away from each other. While sitting in the carriage, Shirone suddenly heard a loud call from outside. "Shirone!" He quickly looked out the window, curious to know who the owner of that voice was. It turned out to be Rian Augent, he shouted loudly toward Shirone. "When you get to the Magic Academy, make sure to beat them all." Shirone heard this and couldn't help but laugh heartily. Then he also shouted back loudly, "You too, Ryan." That was the moment when the two passionate boys met, a memory that would be remembered as the beginning of events that shook the continent. Below the road, a nest of baby birds was chirping. The mother bird had just landed, perched next to her babies, then took off again and flew high into the sky. In the distance, magnificent castles with solemn architecture gradually appeared. That was the Alpheus Magic Academy. In one room, a man gently placed a cup of tea on the table. It was Clump. He smiled tiredly and said, "I've been thinking for 30 minutes. What is the answer?" Alpheus replied in a calm voice, "Even though we have been good friends for 50 years, I really cannot accept this offer." Clump heard this and immediately shouted in dissatisfaction, "What are you talking about? Do you know how much I suffered because of you when I was young?" Alpheus calmly said, "It seems like this matter is quite important, so you are saying such empty words." He continued, "But the special consideration category is not a shortcut for nobles. Every year, a series of requests are sent in, but this category has its own standards." The more Clump listened, the more annoyed he became, and he cursed in his heart. This cunning old man, making me wait for 30 minutes in vain. Then suddenly, he burst out laughing, his eyes flashing. "This time is different." Alpheus was slightly surprised, rarely revealing a strange expression. Clump smiled slyly and continued, "I didn't tell you to accept a useless person. It should be the other way around." Clump said excitedly, "He is a friend of my youngest nephew. He is very talented. Do you know what I thought when I saw him? I thought I was looking at you when you were young." Alpheus took a sip of tea, frowning in doubt. If he is so good, why didn't he enter school the normal way? There must be some problem. Clump kept a serious expression, explaining, "Yes, there is a big problem. He is not a noble." After hearing this, Alpheus exclaimed in surprise, surprising even Clump, "No way." Then Alpheus accurately described Shirone's appearance. "A blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid, right?" Clump nodded, remembering what Shirone had said. "Even if I lose my life, I will not regret being friends with you," he commented, his voice full of admiration. "That was my first impression of him. He is really strong." Clump continued seriously. "At first, I thought he was just a smart kid who knew how to convince adults. But when I suggested adopting him, he objected like this. If you tell me to deny my origins now, it would be like asking me to seek death." Recalling that incident, Clump covered his face and laughed loudly. "Do you think it makes sense? Who would refuse the opportunity to become a noble?" Alpheus stroked his beard and pondered. He understood the natural law of cause and effect. Clump nodded and replied, "That's right. Without a cause, there is no effect. But not everyone understands this law. Many people easily lose themselves. New opportunities can come at any time, but the moment a person denies his origins, they will lose everything." Clump looked at Alpheus and asked, "Does his persistence and refusal to give up his roots remind you of yourself when you were young?" Alpheus was silent and did not answer immediately. After a while, he slowly said, "When they refuse to compromise, it means that others can agree with what they believe is right. But at the same time, they can also be judged. That is what I find dangerous." Hearing this, Clump clicked his tongue and asked softly, "You still can't forgive yourself, right? You've done everything you can. You've trained so many talented people. Isn't it time for you to let go and forgive yourself?" Alpheus laughed, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "Forgive yourself? Isn't that too presumptuous, my friend?" He looked out the window, his eyes distant, and confided, "The reason I educate the children is so that someone like me doesn't appear again." Alpheus continued with a somewhat sad expression. "If that child, as you say, is like me, then there is no guarantee that he will not walk the same terrible path as I did, right?" Hearing this, Clump spoke up. "You were once a genius, Alpheus, a genius that comes once in 100 years. You, who was once considered the light of the family, only made one mistake and almost lost everything. But in the end, you came back." He chuckled. "Of course, who would have thought that you would become the principal of an academy in such a remote place?" Alpheus sneered back, "What? Then heaven must be helping you. A useless guy like you becomes an official third-rate swordsman. I am worried about the future of the Tomiya kingdom." Both of them burst into laughter. The atmosphere became lighter. Suddenly, Alpheus stood up, walked to the window, and silently looked at his school. He mused, "Without a cause, there will be no effect. Clump, pouring more tea into his cup, said, "Is this fate? Who would have thought that you knew that boy? The child who was chased away 4 years ago has now returned." Alpheus chuckled. I don't believe in fate, but in his heart, he secretly thought of Shirone, talent buried by class barriers, wandering for 4 years, and now standing before him. Is this really fate? He wondered. Finally, Alpheus resolutely declared, I will take Shirone. In the spring, 3 years later, a carriage rolled up to the small house deep in the forest. Shirone, who had tidied up from hair to clothes, called out excitedly, Mother, Father. Shirone Ariane, now 17 years old, smiled brightly, excitedly, saying, I'll be back soon. Shirone's mother hugged him, praising him endlessly. My dear son, I will miss you. Shirone promised, I will write to you often, but do you think your hair is pretty like this? I've never worn it like this before. It feels a bit strange. She smiled and replied, Miss Raina said that short hair is popular among the nobility. Just go ahead, son. Vincent coughed a few times embarrassedly, saying, Did you forget anything? Shirone waved his hand, smiling. Father, I'm 17 years old. Kissing is a bit, Vincent decisively interrupted. Hey, if you don't want to do it, then let me. Shirone shouted, but Vincent gently placed a kiss on his son's forehead, filled with boundless love. Then he gently hugged Shirone, expressing his feelings as a father with all his sincerity and embarrassment. Vincent looked at Shirone, his voice filled with pride. Shirone, I'm proud of you. Shirone enjoyed the warm feeling, but still asked worriedly, but is that really okay? The head of the family said he would give me a house. Vincent replied seriously, Oh my, I'm such an idiot. You're a hunter, right? A hunter's home is the mountains and fields. Shirone was startled, thinking to himself, Is that so? Vincent continued as he escorted his son to the carriage. Even though you refused the Augent family's allowance, they still insisted on giving it to you. Shirone's heart was filled with joy. Today is a happy day because I'm going to the Magic Academy. But he knew that his father had been hiding this from everyone. He secretly guessed he must have refused the invitation to live in the city because he didn't want to be the reason holding me back. Timiran was already waiting outside, respectfully saying, Please get in the carriage. We will escort you to the academy. Shirone got into the carriage, stuck his head out the window, and shouted excitedly, I will be back soon. And so his first day at the academy began. The carriage slowly rolled away, disappearing into the distance. Behind, the couple quietly sent off their child who was learning to grow up and pursue his dream. Inside the carriage, there were only Shirone and Timiran. The atmosphere became awkward. When they arrived, Timiran took the initiative to open the carriage door, calling out, Young master, we have arrived. He helped Shirone get out. His face was filled with surprise and fascination. Timiran continued, This is Alpheus Magic Academy. Right now, it is bustling with people. The whole area is bustling. The school gate was tall and spacious, exuding a noble aura. Timiran spoke up. I will pay for the study materials, young master. You just need to study hard. Shirone was grateful and said, Thank you, escort butler. Timiran replied, Seriously, I was just doing my job. Shirone bowed slightly, expressing his sincerity. Now I have the chance to say thank you. I was able to come here thanks to your help. I will never forget your efforts. He smiled, saying the words he had been holding back for so long. Suddenly, a sentence startled Shirone. No matter how talented a commoner is, he is still a commoner. He can never surpass a noble. Before him was Timiran's stern, dark face. Timiran continued, his voice calm. However, not everyone is given this opportunity. When you enter the school, many nobles will not like you. He smiled and advised, but you must persevere. If you persevere to the end, everything will pass. Shirone was touched and replied, Thank you. I will definitely become a mage. Timiran nodded. Now, if you are ready, follow me. We need to register you. The two of them walked deeper into the school. Shirone thought to himself, Alpheus Magic Academy, a place considered the cradle of geniuses. What will I learn here? And who will I meet? Inside, the guards shouted in unison, We will serve you wholeheartedly. In the schoolyard, people like Shirone were gathered, each carrying their own burning dreams. After completing the formalities, Timiran instructed, I'm leaving now. If you need anything, just contact me. Shirone replied, Yes, thank you very much. But then he looked around thinking, Who will come to pick me up? Should I take a look around while I wait? Suddenly, he noticed the long boards on the wall. Alpheus Magic Academy operates on a 10-rank system with a total of 420 students, 30 of whom are in the graduating class. Every year, the number of graduating students is only... Shirone was startled, his eyes widening. Only 10 people? Suddenly a voice rang out. So this is Mr. Shirone? Shirone immediately turned around, quickly bowing respectfully. Hello, principal. Alpheus laughed and said, We've met before. Do you remember me? Shirone replied, Thank you very much for that time. Alpheus patted him on the back and said in a friendly tone, "It's okay. We can talk as we walk," he announced. "You'll need to take an entrance exam." Shirone was startled as he hadn't studied anything. "A test? I don't know anything." Alpheus reassured him. "Don't worry. It's just a simple test to place you in a class." Tamaran interjected, asking, "Can you enter the spirit realm?" Shirone nodded yes. Hearing this, Alpheus couldn't hide his admiration. "Wow, that's impressive." He thought to himself, who would have thought he could open the spirit realm himself? If I had started teaching him from a young age, it would have been better. I missed out on a talent right in front of me. Alpheus thought to himself, even though it's late, I need to teach him the basics first. The entrance examination hall will be full of 10-year-olds. If he comes early, he'll lose face. He turned to suggest, "Do you want to take a walk around the school?" The two of them entered another area. There, a young boy was reading 3 books floating in the air. As the boy passed by, Shirone immediately noticed, "What strange thing just passed by me?" He stammered, Principal?" Alpheus smiled, introducing, "This is the classroom where students study." Shirone looked up amazed. The freshman class. It was the 18th class, the introductory class. Many children were flying above, using magic. They passed books to each other, laughing and talking happily. Shirone stood below, watching in amazement. The children were happily playing. Some of them gathered to play games and eat snacks. Shirone looked around with interest and exclaimed, "Everyone is using magic." Alpheus nodded. "That's right. But the place we need to go to is a little different." They continued walking to the senior class area, from 7th grade to 4th grade. It was quiet. All the students were studying seriously, not joking around. Shirone secretly commented, "The atmosphere is different. The people around are all around my age. What are they discussing so enthusiastically?" A black-haired boy spoke up. "A large amount of magic power can lower the air below freezing point, but wouldn't condensing the refrigerant be more effective? After all, the reaction will happen faster." He continued, "What about this? If we adjust the time instead of magic power?" Shirone was startled, almost exclaiming, "What?" Shirone was shocked to realize a painful truth. Why can't I understand what they're saying, even though we're using the same language? Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out behind him. From the smoke, a girl walked out coughing. Seeing Alpheus, she quickly bowed. "Ah, hello, Principal." Alpheus smiled and replied, "Okay, it seems like there's a problem." The red-haired girl with glasses explained, "Yes, I was testing something to amplify the sound, but it turned out to be an error." Shirone thought to himself, "Don't they care about the explosion?" Alpheus commented, "It seems like the input and output are a bit unbalanced. Check if the current is stable." The girl eagerly raised her thumb. "Thank you, Principal. I'll do it again right away." Shirone was surprised, standing there staring at the scene before him. Shirone thought in amazement, the principal didn't stop her, and she's going to try again? He looked around, his face blank and bewildered. "It's like I'm in a completely different world." As the two continued their tour, a girl with long, bright red hair passed by. It was Amy, a beautiful young woman who made the surrounding boys swoon, following her without taking their eyes off her. They entered another room where something caught Shirone's attention. "Is this a notice board?" On the wall hung a yellow board covered in words. Shirone looked at it carefully, thinking, "This shows the rankings of the entire middle school class. The top is Karmis. Isn't that a first-class noble family? Specifically, Amy Karmis." Shirone stood there in a daze, his face filled with astonishment. "I can't believe it. All the people on this board are as talented as me, yet she's at the top." A strong desire rose up and blossomed in his heart. "I want that too. I'll start my studies all over again, right here." Shirone's eyes sparkled with hope, a strong driving force driving him. "I have to change this ranking." Suddenly a voice called out from behind, "Hey, Amy, wait for me." Shirone curiously turned his head, thinking to himself, "Is this Amy Karmis, first in the intermediate class?" But then when his eyes met the red-haired girl, a strange feeling made him pause. Her face evoked a terrifying memory. A dark past suddenly flooded his mind. Memories flooded back, making Shirone shiver. Back then, he was grabbed by the shirt and beaten mercilessly by a group of thugs. Leading them was Amy, like a little devil, pointing straight at his face, questioning, "Where did you learn magic? Why would a commoner like you dare?" Returning to reality, Amy passed by him without saying a word. But suddenly she glanced at Shirone. He quickly turned his face away, his heart pounding. An orange-haired girl ran from behind, shouting, "Amy, I told you to wait and go together, you idiot." Shirone lowered his head, silently begging, "Please don't see me, please." Luckily, both girls had already passed by. Cerielle, the orange-haired girl, turned back happily, saying, "Did you see that? That guy we just passed by?" Cerielle exclaimed, "He looks handsome. A new student? But he doesn't look like one." She tilted her head in wonder, "Or maybe a transfer student?" Amy replied, her voice slightly thoughtful, "That's interesting. I think I've seen him before." Cerielle was surprised and shouted, "What? You're interested in him too?" "You're not interested in boys," Amy quickly retorted. "That's not it," she explained. I just think he looks familiar." Cerielle giggled, teasing, "Don't lie. You have a crush on him, right?" Amy firmly denied. "No, I didn't say that." That was Amy Karmis, the top student in the middle school class, the most popular girl in the middle school district. Amy had rejected countless confessions from seniors, juniors, and classmates, always being the perfect model among model students. But the only person who knew about Amy's dark past was trying to get into the academy. Alpheus turned around and asked, "Are you cold?" Shirone replied, trembling. "Number." They were standing in front of the third examination site of the Magic Academy, a building with ancient and solemn architecture. The two of them walked inside. Alpheus spoke up. "Oh my, it doesn't seem to be over yet." He leaned towards Shirone and said, "That's interesting. Take a good look at what that kid is doing." In the center, between three circles filled with magical symbols, was a brown-haired child. Above, the examiners were watching intently. Alpheus explained, "When you enter the spirit realm, you will see the symbols on the wall change. How you perceive them will help us judge the size, strength, flexibility, and tendencies of the spirit realm." Alpheus continued, "So you just need to answer the professor's questions honestly." Shirone nodded, his eyes shining, and replied, "Yes." His heart was filled with excitement. "How interesting!" From above, Thad called out, "Cammy, can you use magic?" The child replied, "Yes." Cammy explained, "I can levitate objects in the air." Thad praised, "Oh, how cute." "Very good. Try entering the spirit realm." Cammy nodded. "Yes." The boy closed his eyes, announcing, "I have entered." Thad asked softly, "What is the farthest number you can see?" Cammy replied, 6. A professor smiled and asked back, 6? Alpheus explained to Shirone, "The number 6 means that the diameter of the boy's spirit realm is 6 meters." Shirone nodded, accepting. "Understood." A brown-haired man asked again, "What color do you find the strongest?" Cammy replied, "Red. I feel like I'm entering a world of red." The man noted, "The divergent type related to light and fire. This shows a strong tendency to be active." Alpheus explained to Shirone, "Divergent type means that the boy's spiritual field is much stronger than his age." A female professor asked, "Do you see the giant tower?" Cammy replied, "It's on my left." Sheina then asked, "How do you feel the temperature?" The boy replied, "It's a bit hot. I'm sweating." After finishing, Sheina praised, "Good job, Cammy." The boy ran back happily, his face beaming. Sheina exclaimed, "This year's freshmen are really impressive." Thad laughed, agreeing, "That's right, that student's spiritual field is 12 meters. Sheina commented, "The quality of the students is getting better every year." Finally, the judges wrote down Cammy's evaluation, good at using the spirit domain, but a little bit weak in endurance. Then they called out, "Next, Shirone Ariane." Alpheus put his arm around Shirone's shoulder, smiling encouragingly, "Show them your talent." Shirone replied, smiling brightly, "Yes, I will do my best." Thad in the audience rubbed his chin, thinking, so this is the child who passed the special test that the principal mentioned. Sheina also thought to herself, what a special choice, but he is quite old. Borrowing the name of a noble family, isn't that family very famous? She looked at the papers. Shirone Ariane, 17 years old, guest status of a noble. Sheina thought to herself, he must have discovered his talent a little late. Sheina looked at Shirone and thought, well, his appearance is special, but in this school, he will soon be overshadowed. Thad spoke up. Shirone Ariane, can you use magic? Shirone replied, no, I have never learned it before. Thad raised his eyebrows. Is that so? Even if you haven't learned it, you should still be able to do something. Alpheus frowned slightly, thinking, that's how they think. Magic is the act of turning knowledge in the mind into reality. Noble children are taught many things from a young age, so they naturally use magic. But this child has no knowledge. Thad continued, all right, now step into the circle and enter your spirit realm. He asked, can you enter the spirit realm? Shirone hesitated. I will try. Thad breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness it doesn't seem to be a serious case of domestic violence. Shirone slowly entered his spiritual realm. Around him, a bright blue light appeared. A beam of light from above shone down on his head, and magical symbols began to move, floating in the air. Shirone opened his eyes, amazed at the scene. So that's how it is. Thad asked, his voice familiar. Now, Shirone, tell us the furthest number you saw. Shirone paused, not answering. Thad called out again, Mr. Shirone. The brown-haired woman smiled. He seems embarrassed. Alpheus stood outside, speaking encouragement. Shirone, answer quickly. We won't classify you. Alpheus continued to reassure him, we just want to find the best way to educate our child. Shirone hesitated, then spoke. I saw a number, but it was so long that I couldn't read it all. Thad was puzzled. You can't read it? It's not based on vision, but on your feelings. Shirone explained further, no, that's not what I meant. I felt it, but the number was too long, and it's even getting longer. Thad sighed, thinking, really? He frowned and said, then let's start with the first numbers you saw. Shirone focused, slowly observing the field. The number before him stretched out endlessly. He saw 3, then 4, and a series of numbers behind. Finally, he concluded and answered, 3.14. Thad was startled. What? Sheina panicked. Shirone, we didn't put 3.14 in there. Did you make a mistake? Shirone frowned and replied, really? But that's what I saw. Sheina thought to herself, really? There are indeed a few cases where the pi ratio appears. That means the size of his spiritual domain has exceeded the range we set. She was surprised. He can really see up to 30 meters? The brown-haired woman continued to ask, then what color do you see the strongest? Shirone looked around and replied, blue, completely blue. The professors looked at each other surprised. One exclaimed, if it's blue, isn't it a convergence type? Another whispered, but his spiritual domain is still so big. The convergence type, the durability is superior to the size. It's the complete opposite of the divergence type. Alpheus stood by, equally stunned. He thought to himself, now I understand why Clump is so determined, but this is not just an outstanding talent. His eyes widened, sweat beading on his forehead. The professors wrote down the 2 words convergence on Shirone's file, then continued, both hemispheres. An older professor asked, how many numbers are floating around? Shirone looked into his spiritual field, thinking to himself, is he asking about this? No need to count them one by one. He clearly felt that in that space, countless bright dots were sparkling. He answered decisively, 867 numbers. The professor was stunned after hearing this. His face stiffened, his mouth stammering, 867? He wrote down on his paper with a trembling voice, density 86.7%. Alpheus was speechless outside, his face suddenly becoming serious. He thought to himself, this is dangerous. Sheina gently pushed her glasses up, her eyes slightly wary. She calmed down and continued the test. Shirone, how cold do you feel now? Shirone replied, quite cold, to the point of freezing. Sheina was not surprised and immediately wrote down on her paper, as expected. She wrote in the overall evaluation, convergence and defense with outstanding durability, unusually large spirit domain size. The brown-haired woman smiled and praised, very good. Now we need to meet to decide which class you will be in. All new students, please wait outside. Shirone obeyed, turned around, and walked out with the other children. He took the lead, gently pushed the door open, and slowly walked out, waiting for all the children to leave the room. Shirone closed the door. As soon as the door closed, the room immediately became filled with chatter. What an interesting student. That's right. How could a 17-year-old student possess a spirit domain with a diameter of more than 300 meters? The density of the spirit domain increases with size, but he reached 86.7%. The old professor spoke up. Above all, it was pure concentration, without using any enhancement skills. Is he a monk practicing asceticism in the mountains? Suddenly, Thad spoke up, silencing the room. Could he be lying? He smiled mockingly. Think about it. A spirit domain with a density of nearly 90%, a diameter of 30 meters, from a 17-year-old who knows nothing about magic. It's a bit absurd, right? Thad raised an eyebrow. Is it possible that he intentionally increased the number before answering us? Sheina replied softly but firmly. Mr. Thad, you seem to have forgotten that new students have no reason to lie. If they enter the advanced classes that way, they won't be able to keep up with the lessons, let alone take the tests. Why would a student risk lying when they first arrive at school? She emphasized. More importantly, some teachers here seem to have forgotten that pi appears as an error code. That's not something a normal student would say to get attention. Shirone, who was sitting outside with a wry smile, waited. Thad clicked his tongue, clearly displeased. Suddenly, Alpheus stepped forward and spoke. Then where should we put him? I mean, Shirone. Sheina, a 6th-level mage, immediately stood up, ready to give her opinion. Sheina explained, the 6th grade is about the development of the spirit realm and related theories, and the 5th grade is about to start learning real magic, right? This student's spirit realm is almost complete. Therefore, I propose to put him in the 5th grade. Thad immediately objected, his voice resolute. I disagree. This made Sheina angry inside. Thad, a 6th grade mage, continued, he is a 17-year-old boy who knows nothing about magic. Putting him in the advanced class might cause trouble and make him arrogant. I think we should teach him from the basics. Sheina bluntly replied, That may be true, but not all students are like you, Mr. Thad, Thad angrily shouted. What are you talking about? The two of them then got into a heated argument. Thad shouted, actually, you only want to put him in the 5th grade because you are in charge of that class and want to keep this student for yourself, right? Sheina retorted, what's wrong with wanting to teach such a talented student? The brown-haired professor spoke up. Mr. Thad has a point. Even though he's exceptionally talented, he's still just a young student. How about we teach him step by step from the 10th grade? The old professor sighed wearily. The two of them ended up arguing like that. The brown-haired woman gently suggested, if we send him to the basic class, he might lose motivation because of the inappropriate age. Why don't we postpone the placement and observe him more? The old professor suggested. I think the 7th grade would be reasonable. The 7th grade is an advanced class, but it still has basic classes in the spiritual realm. If he's really talented, skipping a grade is also an option. Alpheus rubbed his chin and nodded, as expected. Your idea is very reasonable. Alpheus did not hesitate, deciding, Shirone will be placed in Class 7. Alpheus Magic Academy operates on a 10-class system, classified based on evaluation. Students are placed in classes of 10 levels, divided into 3 groups. Classes 10 to 8 are elementary, focusing on developing spirit domains. Classes 7 to 4 are advanced, where students learn how to use magic and spirit domains. Finally, the graduating class, from Class 3 to Class 1, undergo rigorous training to train professional mages. The next morning, at the spacious Alpheus Academy, Shirone wore the Class 7 badge on his chest. The newcomer attracted everyone's attention, especially the female students. They were amazed, unable to take their eyes off him. Shirone carried his school bag and slowly walked into the classroom amidst countless gazes. The teacher announced, today, we have a new student in our class. The female students below were buzzing with excitement. He was placed straight into the intermediate class when he entered the school. He seems older, but he's so handsome. Shirone stood on the podium smiling brightly and introduced, I'm Shirone Ariane. Nice to meet you. The entire class immediately became bustling with applause and laughter, mainly from the female students. They warmly welcomed him. The teacher had to ask them to keep quiet. Shirone was filled with excitement. Finally, I've arrived at the Magic Academy. Alpheus Academy, which covered a total of 75,425 square kilometers of mountains and forests, including the dormitories, with 33 buildings and 40 training centers. Although students are not allowed to go out on weekdays, it is not inconvenient because most of the facilities are available on campus. Classes end at 5 in the afternoon, and the time after that is free. Students often go to the library, which is open 24 hours a day. With activities that bring people with similar interests together, the academy satisfies the thirst for knowledge, creating a prestigious environment. Shirone thought to himself, the classes are harder than I thought. There are too many subjects, all high-level knowledge, for nobles who have learned from a young age and spent a long time training. He encountered many difficulties, but somehow he told himself, I can still keep up. Knowledge, through the flow of history, was deeply engraved in Shirone's mind. Little by little, he began to accumulate the knowledge of the world. One fine morning, the teacher announced, class ends here. Everyone did well. Shirone closed his book, thinking, the afternoon is the spiritual field practical class, but the timetable doesn't have the location. He looked around the class, a little embarrassed. Who should I ask? Luckily, there are a few people around my age. Shirone walked over and asked softly, hello, do you know which training center we need to go to? Maria was startled, surprised. You're asking me? Shirone thought to himself. She's really a shy classmate. No wonder I feel comfortable talking to her. Maria replied, you probably don't know. Today's practical class is at the Second Comprehensive Training Center. Shirone asked in surprise, compilation? What kind of synthesis? Maria explained. All the intermediate classes will be training together for 2 weeks. The orientation is today. Hearing this, Shirone paused, thinking, compilation of the intermediate classes? Could it be? The scene shifted to the Second Comprehensive Training Center, where a crowd of students were entering. The atmosphere was bustling with laughter and greetings. Hello, senior. Thank you for last time. Hello, senior. Please sit here. Then in unison, hello, senior Amy, a voice exclaimed. So it's because of her that it's so lively. Cerielle beside her also waved, enjoying some of the glory. Shirone sat above, looking down, secretly exclaiming, famous is amazing. She's really someone I don't want to get involved with if I can avoid it. Shirone thought to herself, but there are 2 comprehensive training sessions every week. Even so, if Amy was in the intermediate class from the beginning, she would have moved up to the graduate class soon. The seniors and juniors chatted animatedly, but still followed the strict rules. Shirone worriedly wondered, can I become invisible? At that moment, the special teacher of the intermediate class, Etella Romi, a 6th level mage, walked in and said loudly, hello, all intermediate students. I am Etella, and I will continue to be in charge of your spiritual class this year. She looked around, then continued. There must be a few students who have transferred since the beginning of the year, right? Although our class is full of outstanding faces, today we welcome a new face to the intermediate class. Etella's words caused all eyes to turn to Shirone. A murmur arose. Are the rumors true? Who is it? Shirone could only smile awkwardly, thinking to himself, wait, that's too dangerous. Etella even carelessly added fuel to the fire. Shirone, will you stand up and greet everyone? Shirone was as if sprayed with glue. His body stiffened. But he still swallowed his saliva, mustering up some courage to stand up. Amy and Cerielle were also attracted, turning to look at Shirone. He smiled, trying to stay calm, introducing, hello, I'm Shirone Ariane. Just started 7th grade. Nice to meet you. Before he finished speaking, the whole room burst into applause. Shirone stood there, his heart pounding, thinking to himself, I don't know what to do. Cerielle was excited, whispering to Amy, Amy, that guy, is he the guy you met yesterday? His name seems to be Shirone. Amy appeared indifferent, but thought to herself, this is the first time I've heard of him. Who is he? He's so famous, I must know all of them. Suddenly, a brown-haired girl spoke up. Does Senior know him? According to my sources, the teachers are super interested in him. Cerielle exclaimed, really? The girl continued. They said his stats were extremely impressive during the entrance exam. Cerielle exclaimed, oh my gosh, I like him even more. I wonder which family's young master he is. That random question made Amy pause. Her eyes lit up, her red hair flying around as if she was excited. She suddenly remembered something shocking. A memory from the past rushed back when she and a few others were caught in something like a tornado. Back then, Amy looked straight at a boy outside and questioned, where did you learn magic? How dare a commoner like you? The boy sobbing outside was none other than Shirone, not Cerielle. Returning to reality, Amy trembled, sweat poured down, and forced a smile. Damn it. The Karmis family was famous for their genius blood. The red eyes, a characteristic only found in the descendants of the Karmis family, allowed them to remember every moment they witnessed precisely. At the training ground, an arrow flew accurately, hitting the bullseye. Another arrow flew forward, splitting the previous arrow in half. But the shooter, a red-haired girl, was not happy. Despite hitting the bullseye repeatedly, Amy's face was still sad, as if all her efforts in studying had become meaningless. The butler standing beside him kept clapping his hands, exclaiming, how wonderful, miss! The red-haired girl was Amy, the youngest daughter of the Karmis family, and also the most talented among the siblings. Her father laughed loudly, put a chess piece on the table, and said heartily, truly a descendant of the Karmis family. Amy was silent, staring at the chessboard. The butler called out, miss? Her father asked, what's the matter, Amy? Amy stood up coldly, her face full of boredom. She angrily turned around and left, followed by a group of thugs. Her heart was filled with hatred. Hate everything. Family, family, family. What does my ability have to do with this family? I can do anything without the name of the family. Amy followed the thugs, fighting everywhere, thinking to herself, I can do whatever I want. Amy sat cross-legged watching the thugs fight, thinking dejectedly, so boring. But then someone surprised her, forcing her to think again. Amy looked at the thugs lying around her in amazement. In front of her was a boy. That boy, tears streaming down his face, sobbing. The person who changed Amy's mind was a boy of low birth. In the school hallway, Shirone was bowing to everyone. Amy looked at that scene. The corner of her mouth twitched, exclaiming, damn, damn. Suddenly, Cerielle called, Amy, Amy. The brown-haired girl next to her stuttered, Senior, Senior. Both of them were stunned, not believing their eyes. Amy was startled and quickly explained, the strap of my shirt is just a little uncomfortable. She thought to herself, I knew it. The memories recorded by the red eyes of the Karmis family are never wrong. The brown-haired girl continued, what are we talking about? But Amy was lost in thought, thinking to herself, I thought he was a noble. Who would have thought Shirone was a commoner? How did he get into this academy? Amy's body trembled. That past memory was truly embarrassing to her. She slapped her forehead, groaning inwardly, I want to die. Her eyes were misty. I've erased all traces of that immature period. There's no way he'll remember that day, right? Memories from 5 years ago flooded back. Amy remembered when she was squatting in front of a blonde-haired boy. His face was blurred with tears. She covered her mouth, sneering. A slave doesn't have hooves, right? Why don't we cut them off? A moment later, Amy stood behind, blushing and covering her mouth, watching the thugs strip the boy's clothes. Amy stood there, her face flushed, her heart pounding as the memories flooded back. The thugs surrounded the blonde boy, laughing, stripping him off piece by piece. Amy had just stood behind, covering her mouth, both curious and embarrassed, not stopping him. Now, she imagined Shirone telling the story to others, his voice full of confidence. Senior Amy, she's not what everyone thinks. In Amy's mind, Shirone waved his hand and continued, 5 years ago, she hung out with thugs in the alleys. Someone like me, who was trusted by the professor, why would I lie? Then he leaned closer and whispered, that's not all. She's actually a big guy. Listen, she even tried to strip me off. Amy was startled, so angry that she tore the page in front of her. She clenched her fists and hissed, no, never, absolutely not. We must nip the rumor in the bud. On the other side, Shirone suddenly shivered, feeling like someone was staring at him. He muttered, is someone looking at me? Professor Etella Romi, a 6th-level mage specializing in intermediate spiritual fields, stood on the podium and said, now then, everyone, what exactly is a spiritual field? A student replied, it's a mage's mental state, teacher. Etella nodded. That's right, it's the mage's perception of his mental state. Originally, the spiritual field was spherical in shape because that's the easiest shape to focus on. Her eyes sparkled with the blue color of the spiritual field. She continued, through practical training, we can perceive and transform it at will. Etella opened her spiritual field and announced, I'll show you the spiritual field. Shirone opened his mouth in surprise. I can see it. He stared intently at the blue spiritual field before him, thinking, I can see the professor's spiritual field with my naked eyes. The range is about 10 meters. Etella introduced, this is the basic form of the spirit domain, a sphere. But as I said, in actual combat, the sphere form is rarely used. She snapped her fingers and smiled. Let me show you an example. A target appeared, floating in the air. Etella continued, I will use magic to target the target. My spirit domain has a range of 10 meters, but the target is 20 meters away. I will use fireball, a fire magic. Shirone was excited, covering her mouth, thinking, finally, I get to see someone use magic. A small fireball appeared on Etella's fingertip. She said, first, I will create a small flame. Etella controlled the fireball, her voice calm. Now let's see if I can hit it accurately. The fireball flew, dragging the bright flames along, rushing straight towards the target. But when it reached the boundary of the spirit domain, the flame immediately went out. The students below widened their eyes and gasped, the flame disappeared. Etella smiled and explained, as you can see, most magic cannot leave the spirit domain. Therefore, magic can only maintain its form within the spirit domain. She bowed slightly, raised her hand, and continued. However, if we expand the spirit domain, Etella's spherical spirit domain, immediately turned into a straight line. She said, extend it straight to the target like this. Etella's small flame flared up, hitting and shattering the target. She turned to the students and explained, then we can reach the target. Cheers of admiration echoed throughout the auditorium. The older students whispered to each other, admiring Etella's performance. The senior students whispered, look at the surprised faces of the 7th graders. So cute. Shirone and his classmates clapped their hands in unison at Etella's eye-catching demonstration. He thought to himself, I didn't know the spirit realm could do that. Can it really change its shape? Etella continued, but there's a weakness to this method. The students' faces were slightly disappointed. A male student spoke up. Isn't that the right way, teacher? Etella opened the projection screen next to her and pointed at the image. Changing the shape of the spirit realm requires a high level of concentration. In real combat, when the opponent attacks in all sorts of ways, constantly changing shape is not a wise choice. She pointed at the green information screen and explained, therefore, people divide the spirit realm into 4 main types. Etella introduced defensive form, offensive form, target form, and redirection form. These are the 4 main forms of the spirit domain. She continued, let's start with the defensive form. The defensive form is octagonal in shape, allowing the spirit domain to resist most attacks. Etella's spirit domain instantly transformed into an octagonal shape, enveloping her inside. She explained, the more contact surfaces, the higher the defensive effect. Etella waved her hand, and the spirit domain transformed into a star shape. Next is the star form, also known as the offensive form. This shape helps the user locate the target easily. The brightest point points in the direction with the most targets. Her spirit domain transformed again. Etella smiled, continuing, now for the target form. Etella continued, her voice even, the target form is extremely effective in long-range combat, but less effective against fast-moving targets. That's the theory, but in reality, the distance from the ends to the center is quite far, so turning is very difficult. The important thing is the speed at which you turn this form. The students whispered, she used that technique without even blinking. Professor, do you think we can do that? Meanwhile, Shirone was thinking hard. With this method, I can use the spirit field within a range of 10 meters in real combat. Etella continued. Lastly, the direction change form. It's not very popular because even fifth graders have trouble mastering it. She smiled, but I'll show you an example. At that moment, a student behind Shirone spoke up. If we can do this, we can move up to a higher class, right? In 8th grade, I got a perfect score in the spirit domain subject. It was as easy as pie. Before she could finish speaking, she was rendered speechless by the scene below. The students were all gaping. Even Shirone was startled. A commotion arose. Spirit domain. The green sphere below gradually separated from Etella. The entire auditorium shouted, separate from the professor's body? Shirone was so excited that she almost stood up, thinking to herself, I don't understand. The spirit domain is the mage's mental state. How can it be separated from the body? Etella's spirit domain turned into streams, swirling around her. Shirone was curious. I wonder what's inside it, the center of that spirit domain. Etella stood there, surrounded by the transformed spirit domains, looking like a fantasy painting. Etella continued, the redirection form is extremely difficult to use, to the point that even real mages have trouble. But its strength lies in the fact that the mage is not at the center of the spirit domain, so it is not limited by movement. Thanks to that, targeting with instantaneous incantation is no longer theoretical, because its range of action is almost limitless. She explained, instant incantation is when the mage puts magic into the redirection form, and it activates when it hits the target. The students were amazed and shouted in unison. They were talking excitedly. How did the professor do that? She was so calm as if she was breathing. Just entering the spirit domain is already difficult. The girl behind Shirone interjected, she is on a completely different level. She is a 6th level mage. Shirone was stunned, her gentle expression concealing an extraordinary talent. Etella adjusted her glasses and smiled. You guys will be disappointed if I skip the practical part of the first class, right? The top student in the target type quick magic test. Please step forward. Before she finished speaking, the students below were already excited and noisy about the practical part. Etella called out, Amy Karmis, class 4, where are you? Let's start with the student representative. The girl sitting next to Cerielle exclaimed, Amy is amazing. She's the best in the class. Cerielle turned around and smiled brightly. There you go again. Amy is truly a star. The boys are all smitten with you when they see you. But when she looked over, she was shocked to see Amy absent-minded. Cerielle stammered, finishing her sentence. Right, Amy? Amy was sweating profusely, thinking to herself, I don't want to be the center of attention right now. Target form, one of the 4 spirit forms, had the advantage of long attack range. However, it was disadvantageous when facing fast-moving targets or multiple targets at once. However, if the user had the ability to concentrate completely and control the spirit form at high speed, all weaknesses would disappear. Boom, boom, 2 consecutive explosions rang out. Amy waved her hand, launching several fireballs towards the target, accurate and powerful. With this skill, the target form became an impregnable fortress for enemies from afar. The students in the stands exclaimed, as expected of Senior Amy, she's amazing. They whispered, usually, the contestants in the fast magic shooting contest would rotate through the 4 spirit forms, but Senior Amy always won first place even when she only used target form. The classmate sitting next to Shirone muttered, can I become a mage like that? Shirone was stunned, thinking to himself, even an amateur like me has to admit that she is too excellent. He couldn't take his eyes off Amy's performance. The fireballs continuously destroyed the targets. Not only did she rotate the spirit field continuously while remaining still, Amy also accurately attacked every target within the spirit field's scanning range. She was like a ruler of the arena, with just one move. Shirone exclaimed. Her face was expressionless, and her every move exuded nobility. The applause was thunderous, accompanied by exclamations of admiration. How amazing. A student behind Shirone whispered, if I could date a senior like her, my student life would be completely different. The girl beside her laughed. Dream on, she doesn't care about anyone. Don't forget the Karmis family. Shirone listened to their conversation and thought to himself, I understand why the boys are crazy about her. Not only is she a high-ranking noble, she lacks nothing. He looked down at Amy below and thought to himself, a perfect person. So why is she hanging out with those street punks? Amy finished her demonstration and bowed. She used quick magic, finishing with a result. Level 9, time 205 seconds. The entire auditorium erupted in applause. Suddenly, Amy raised her head, her sharp blue eyes staring in one direction. Shirone felt that gaze and was startled. The surrounding students were in an uproar. What? Senior Amy? Impossible. Someone shouted. She just looked at the new student, right? Amy was startled, immediately turned back to her seat, and cursed in her heart. Damn it, what are you looking at that brat for? She was angry, thinking, I can't help it, it's so annoying. But at least I can confirm one thing. The surroundings were in an uproar. Did they know each other? No way, he just enrolled today. Shirone turned pale, thinking, I see. Not only Shirone, Amy also had the same thought at this moment. Amy muttered in her heart, he misses me. Shirone also realized she misses me. Amy pondered, if he spreads news about my past, it will be a big problem. Should I shut him up? Then she shook her head. No, calm down. I'm the top student in the school. Amy thought to herself, just a few words from someone like that, why are people so gullible? If I'm not careful, things will only get worse. Cerielle ran over and asked worriedly, Amy, what's going on in the shadow realm? Your face is all red. Amy quickly shook her head and rubbed her face. No, it's nothing. The practice session was then divided into classes, and the students moved to the area below. Professor Ethan Law said, grade 7, let's start with the defensive form. If you want to master it, you have to master this form first. She walked around and explained, Magi need to maintain concentration to survive on the battlefield. Shirone stood alone, eyes closed, concentrating. He thought to himself, the trick is to imagine yourself shrinking and condensing your consciousness. In his mind, Shirone gradually drew out a realm that belonged to him. Shirone concentrated. First, condense the spirit domain, create a block, then build a frame to prevent it from collapsing. Just as he thought to himself, I succeeded, he was suddenly startled. Looking at the shadow abyss in front of him, he muttered, no, it's not certain until it materializes. It would be easier if I could see the spirit domain in the shadow abyss. Shirone walked up to Etella and asked, Teacher, can I use the shadow abyss? Etella was surprised. Huh? The shadow abyss? She looked around and said, actually, only upperclassmen can use it first. Shirone followed her gaze, thinking to himself, when learning magic, there's no need to worry about others. He continued to ponder. The opportunity to truly improve isn't always there. At this moment, Etella turned around and smiled. It seems like no one is using it right now. Etella smiled. Okay, you go ahead. She thought to herself, isn't it too much to have a student representative as a model? The surrounding was noisy. The students were excited. New student? That's good. So cute, Shirone nudged Amy, calling, Amy, look. His next sentence made Amy choke on her water. That student just entered the abyss. Amy turned around, loudly. What the hell is he doing? What can a 7th grader do? Shirone lowered his voice, worried. Amy, you're strange today. Is something wrong? I'm starting to get scared. All eyes turned to the abyss, where Shirone stood alone. The board read abyss, 0-meter range. Shirone stared ahead, thinking, finally met. A green sphere enveloped him. Shirone had seen it with his own eyes. Shirone's spirit domain exploded, startling the surrounding students, who shouted in unison, gosh, what's that size? On the measuring board, the range of the spirit domain kept changing. Shirone raised his head, thinking to himself, now that I think about it, did they say anything about the size of my spirit domain on the entrance exam? If the teacher heard this, he would definitely reply, no, we can't even measure it. Shirone raised his hands, wondering, then how much bigger can it be? Looking at the ever-expanding spirit domain, he screamed in panic, stop! The measuring board showed the words, dark domain range of 20 meters. The 5th grader stuttered, surprised. Is he really a 7th grader? Isn't the average 7th grader only about 13 meters? The chatter continued. Are you sure he's not exaggerating? The students continued to chatter. If that happens, the density will drop to the level of a balloon. Shirone was sweating, thinking, I've stopped. Thank goodness I've been getting too much attention. Now I'll switch to defense mode. He was about to change the domain, but suddenly stopped. What's going on? Shirone looked at the domain in front of him, panicking. No, it's not expanding. It's shrinking. Everything was fine during practice. Amy, standing in the 4th grade area, widened her eyes. There's no way he could have succeeded in the first practice, right? Shirone wondered, what went wrong? Am I scared because I saw it with my own eyes? He shook his head. No, my concentration shouldn't be affected by something like that. Shirone concentrated. I have to find out the reason. What's the difference between the outside and inside the domain? There must be something. A flash of light like a drop of water stirred the surface of a calm lake in Shirone's mind. He exclaimed inwardly, I see. He recalled the time when Etella stood in the abyss, performing so comfortably that he mistook everything for something simple. Shirone pondered, changing the spirit domain requires concentration. The thought of shrinking the spirit domain has also consumed my concentration. He took a deep breath, regaining his composure. If the thought of shrinking the spirit domain affects it, then just keep it at its normal size. Shirone opened his eyes wide, concentrating intensely, declaring, then just leave it at its normal size. As soon as he finished speaking, his spirit domain immediately expanded. The surrounding students gasped, what? It's getting even bigger? Shirone's spirit domain grew larger and larger, his eyes burning with determination. Shirone raised both hands, concentrating his mind. There's no need to deviate to either side now. He looked at his hands, thinking to himself, I'll shrink everything at once. Shirone's spirit domain immediately contracted, forming solid planes. The upperclassman exclaimed, that new student? Really? They looked at Shirone standing in the spirit domain, and the crowd immediately started to talk. It worked. Shirone was amazed by his own spirit realm, even though it was only the first day. He reached out to touch it, feeling like he was standing in the middle of a precious gem. Etella stood beside him, adjusting her glasses, thinking to herself, the superior convergence of the defensive type must have helped him. But to succeed on the first day, how amazing. I heard that he even stunned the teachers at the entrance exam. Shirone turned to Amy excitedly. It seems that the news that he has all the teachers' attention is true, right? What do you think, Amy? Amy's face suddenly became scary, making Cerielle panic. Amy thought to herself, how could I forget? The old memories of Shirone kept lingering, haunting her mind. Amy thought to herself, that brat is the source of my humiliation. He came all the way here. There must be someone behind him supporting him. She stared at Shirone in the abyss, muttering, he will narrow the gap between the classes sooner or later. Then his popularity will grow even more. Amy made up her mind. Change of plans. I have to approach him secretly. Etella, still surprised, secretly assessed. He is especially excellent at omnipotence, as if he has spent his whole life training in the mountains. Shirone spoke up. Teacher, the size of the spirit domain has shrunk quite a bit. Etella nodded. That's right. The size has shrunk, but the hardness of the spirit domain has increased. With this hardness, most physical impacts cannot break my spirit domain. Moreover, it also helps me somewhat resist magical attacks. Etella smiled and said, very good. I can dispel the spirit domain. The spirit domain around Shirone gradually dissipated. He bowed his head and said, thank you, teacher. Suddenly, the cheers in the hall exploded. The students from all the classes praised in unison. Good job, new student. Congratulations. Shirone was startled and thought, why is everyone looking at me? He shyly said, Thursday, thank you, everyone, and quickly ran away from the center. Etella looked at Shirone and smiled, thinking, I understand his insight in perfecting his defensive form. With his strong convergence ability and unusually large spirit domain, it is understandable that he succeeded. Observing Shirone's shyness at the attention, she thought to herself, I must observe him more closely. Countless eyes were on Shirone, but each gaze had a different shade. A group of students were talking, it looks like he will be joining our class soon. That talent is really amazing. Their eyes were shining with competition. A few girls were exclaiming, impressive, he did that on the first day. Their eyes were sparkling with admiration and love. But there were also eyes of jealousy and envy. And in the last row, Amy looked at Shirone with a cold, scary gaze. The next day, at the academy, another pair of eyes appeared. A woman with purple hair tied up high walked in with a curious look towards Shirone. The classroom door opened. The whole class immediately became noisy when they realized that the person who had just arrived was Professor Sheina. A curious student asked, Professor, please tell me about your first love. Shirone looked up and recognized the person who had just entered. A cold, stern gaze swept across the classroom from the podium, leaving the students speechless. Shirone was startled. That was the scary professor from the entrance exam, Sheina Olifer. He didn't know, but Sheina was the professor in charge of the 5th grade. The other students excitedly whispered, amazing. Who would have thought that a 7th grader like us would get to take her lectures? But Sheina was annoyed and thought to herself, Professor Thad is so annoying. If you put Shirone in the 5th grade, he will definitely find a way to catch up with the others. She pushed up her glasses, her eyes sharp. The reason Sheina went to the trouble of coming to the 7th grade was to personally teach Shirone to ensure that his talent would develop in the right direction. Sheina thought to herself, I will help you move up the class as quickly as possible, and you must be a student in my class. Shirone was startled, his eyes wide open, looking forward. He thought to himself, I think she just looked at me. I must have imagined it. A classmate sitting in front of Shirone asked loudly, this is the first period. Can you tell us a story? Are you dating Mr. Thad? Sheina did not answer, but her frown showed her disgust. She raised her hand, and a small block of ice appeared in her palm, sparkling like crystal. Sheina asked the class, can anyone explain the theory behind this magic? The glass door next to Shirone was fogged up by a layer of cold mist. Sheina's voice was still even, what is cold air? The classroom ceiling sparkled with ice crystals due to the sharp drop in temperature. Sheina continued, what is cryogenics? The students shivered, hugging their bodies tightly, stammering, Professor, it's so cold. Sheina calmly explained, you feel cold because you lack energy. She controlled the small block of ice in her hand, walked down the class, and said, but the concept of cold doesn't really exist in this world. Temperature can only increase infinitely, not decrease infinitely. The block of ice in Sheina's hand shattered. She smiled. When energy reaches absolute zero, we call it a state of zero. If we extract a little bit of energy from this room, we can easily create an ice block like this. She paused for a moment, then asked, but if we break it into tiny pieces and create a convection current, what will happen? The ice fragments fell to the floor. Sheina answered herself, the answer is that I can create enough cold to kill a person. She looked at the students and smiled. As you have just experienced. The students trembled, both scared and speechless, thinking, so we are going to die? Sheina turned her back and walked back to the podium, continuing, so the question is, how does a mage absorb that energy? She picked up the chalk, wrote on the board, and looked down at the class. Without any tools or equipment, how do they activate such magic? Shirone observed attentively. Sheina drew a circle symbolizing the spirit realm and the mage, explaining, the mage controls the world within the range of his spirit realm. Of course, only within a certain range. But when he is within it, the mage is a god. Sheina's voice was steady. If you want to influence the senses, the spirit realm can create light, scent, and even physical sensations. These are the special senses of magicians, giving them the ability to dominate reality. But, she paused, tapped the chalk on the board and emphasized, even if they possess such divine powers, what if they don't know what they are capable of? She raised her voice. To activate magic, magicians must meet certain conditions, omniscience and omnipotence. The seventh graders gasped, listening attentively. Sheina continued. Magicians activate magic based on omniscience and omnipotence. No matter how omnipotent you are, without knowledge, you cannot perform magic. Sheena's words seemed to wake Shirone up. He thought to himself, so that's why mages, despite having special senses, still study the world like scholars. Shirone suddenly realized, that's why I can't use magic. He remembered how he defended himself before, telling himself, I don't understand anything about omniscience. I only focus on training omnipotence. Sheina continued, at this school, you will study countless subjects. The spirit realm is only half of magic. She smiled. If you don't work hard, you won't be able to become real mages. After the introduction, Sheina began the lesson. Now we will study basic chemistry. The whole class said in unison, yes, professor. Shirone was determined, his eyes burning. I can do it. Shirone's eyes were burning, as if to affirm, I will become a magician. In the evening outside the academy, a few female friends were chatting animatedly. Did you go to the library today? Yes, there's an exam coming up. They even discussed studying at the dining table. One asked, what's the topic of your research paper? The other replied, I need to finish a few things first. Students were bustling back and forth in the schoolyard. After school, they often went to the library or joined research groups. Shirone hugged his school bag and walked forward, thinking to himself, I go to the library every day. Thanks to that, I can barely keep up with the noble students. He looked up at the sky and sighed. There's no time to sleep. I'm so tired. But then Shirone pulled himself together. Anyway, learning magic makes me feel relieved. Shirone walked quickly, his heart filled with excitement. My dream is gradually coming true, he muttered. I wonder if there is a magic that allows people to not need to sleep. Suddenly his feet left the ground. His body felt light. Shirone was startled. What is this? I'm flying. He turned around, horrified to see someone grabbing his collar. What the hell is going on? Shirone was stunned when someone carried him flying through the sky like a hawk chasing its prey. In the deep forest, thud a sound. Shirone was thrown to the ground. The pain made tears well up in his eyes. He fell to his knees, looking up at the person in front of him. Shirone was startled, fiery red hair. Amy Karmis! He was sweating, thinking, I expected to face her, but who would have thought she would appear so suddenly like this? Shirone hesitated, thinking to himself, is she still the same kid from 5 years ago? Amy spoke up, her expression cold. You really still remember who I am, right? Shirone was startled. What? A small flame flashed on Amy's fingertips, then burned fiercely in front of him. Amy smiled fearfully. That's right. Maybe we should settle things here. Old memories rushed back like a movie. Shirone held his head, fending off the attacks. A voice rang out. Hey, stop. A thug looked at Amy squatting in front of Shirone, worried. Miss, you'll kill the brat. Amy recalled that day, thinking to herself, at first I intended to take him home, but those crying eyes, she pondered, I want to look a little more. The blazing flame was controlled by Amy. She thought, but now, suddenly, Amy widened her eyes, gritting her teeth. You, this bastard. Shirone sat up straight and looked at Amy. His gaze made her suspicious. Is he really that kid from 5 years ago? Shirone sighed and replied, of course I remember. He continued, at that time, you ordered the thugs to strip me. Shirone's words made Amy recall the past. At that moment, she covered her mouth and smiled wickedly. Then why don't you confirm it? Amy quickly interrupted, shouting, stop. You definitely remember it very clearly. She explained loudly, her voice panicked. That's not it, right? It's a misunderstanding. Your memory, you've seriously misunderstood, see? Shirone wanted to say, what? But was interrupted by Amy, you'll understand. Amy blushed and hesitated. I'm not the kind of promiscuous woman. Shirone was bewildered, unable to follow her thoughts. Huh? Amy shouted, those thugs wanted to strip you. I didn't give you that order. She hurriedly continued, her voice confused. No, wait, I think I heard you say you wanted to show off something or something. No, that's not it. Anyway, Amy firmly said, from the beginning, I've never been interested in men, Shirone muttered. No way. You dragged me out here just to say that? Amy paused, screaming in her heart. Of course not. But why am I standing here making excuses like this? Shirone suddenly understood. She's worried that I'll spread rumors about her bad deeds all over the school. The two of them fell into an awkward silence, the atmosphere awkward. Shirone stood up and said, you just need to apologize, can't you? Amy was startled and stepped back. What? Shirone said tiredly, I understand that it's a memory you want to forget. After all, you were one of the best students in the middle school class, and you were very popular. But what happened cannot be changed, he continued slowly. So, instead of making excuses, wouldn't it be better to apologize and close things off? I think that's the right thing to do. Amy was stunned, muttering, apologize? Suddenly, as if a warning bell rang in her head, she thought, wait, stay still, Amy. Her eyes showed panic. This guy is so good at talking. An imaginary chessboard appeared before Amy's eyes. She thought to herself, he said the right things to embarrass me and then schemed to gain an advantage. Dare to compete with me? He must think I'm easy and weak. Amy gritted her teeth and opened her mouth. Apologize? Listen, commoner. Amy looked at Shirone, her voice cold. What do I get from apologizing to you? Shirone was stunned, as if he couldn't believe his ears. What did you say? Amy rubbed her chin, continuing. I mean, let's say I apologize to you. How do I know you'll just accept the apology? And then you can still stab me in the back. There's no trust between us, right? She nodded, thinking to herself, if I just apologize, it's no different than admitting my past mistakes. In the end, I'm the one who's at a loss, right? Shirone looked at her and asked, you must get something from an apology? Apologizing is the minimum courtesy to the person you hurt, not something you can take advantage of. Amy's loud laughter interrupted. Ha! It seems like you don't understand how this world works. Amy thought to herself, another moral attack. I see. She assessed the situation and thought to herself, I'll turn the tables here. She continued sarcastically, if I don't get anything in return, I have no reason to waste my energy. I didn't expect you to talk about morality to act noble in front of me. Amy's words stunned Shirone. She continued, it seems that even if I apologize, I still won't be able to live in peace in this magic academy. Shirone was cornered by Amy and thought to herself, what the hell? So the model student image was just an act? Her evil nature is still intact. Amy covered her mouth and exhaled, thinking to herself, I'm about to win. Should I throw another punch? Amy looked at Shirone, her voice full of meaning. You know what the scariest thing in the Magic Academy is, right? Shirone was stunned, not understanding. Amy smiled faintly, slowly. It's the upperclassmen. Her next words were like a heavy stone pressing down on Shirone's shoulders. If you are set your eyes on by an upperclassman, not only will all the upperclassmen become enemies, but even your classmates will shun you. Amy's eyes were sharp. And if it's revealed that you're a commoner, you'll most likely be expelled from the academy. Shirone shouted, are you so afraid that I'll spread rumors that you're trying to get me expelled? Amy covered her mouth, chuckling. Of course not right away. I just said I'll observe your performance first. I want to see how tight-lipped you are. Shirone frowned. What do you mean? Amy ordered, from now on, bring me coffee every day. I will test your reliability through these chores. Shirone shouted, why should I do it? Amy moved closer, her voice cold. I heard you were specially admitted here. It must be difficult for a commoner to travel so far, right? It would be sad if I got expelled, right? Shirone gritted his teeth. All right. If those trivial chores prove my reliability, I will do it. Amy put on her hooded cloak, smiled faintly. That's the right choice. Just do it well. Your future depends on it. The next second, she revealed a terrifying, threatening gaze. If you dare to tell the teacher, I will drag you to death with me. After saying that, Amy jumped 2 or 3 times, shot up high, and disappeared, like a tornado sweeping past Shirone.